and welcome back to another edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. I am Sean Meyers, joined by co-host Justin Lowery. And Justin, I was very excited to talk to you this week, and unfortunately we've been very, very busy the last couple weeks. I know I personally have had some of the busier weeks in a long time, and I was unable to do the show for the first time last week since we started, so we had a nice little run of about 75 consecutive weeks. Had to take a break, but we're back just in time for a massive week. And while the week is not over yet, there's still Friday night Smackdown's debut, which we'll get into, and then the pay-per-view this weekend. Your thoughts on the Monday Night Raw season premiere, if you want to call it that, and then the big takeaway from last night head-to-head between NXT and All Elite Wrestling.
The Monday Night Raw season premiere was a bit of a letdown. I think going forward, I expect Raw to probably be the fourth best show during the week, behind SmackDown, NXT, and AEW.
And 205 Live.
Absolutely.
Okay.
On the air. Okay, we're not talking just network. I expect SmackDown to have more push since it's on Fox now. That's Fox is going to want the heavy hitters. Raw, you could look at the commentary team. That's clearly the B team. Raw, I think it's going to be kind of mediocre to bad from here on out. Really, SmackDown, we'll see what happens tomorrow night. We're about 24 hours away as we're filming this right now to SmackDown Live. But I think Wednesday night will be the night for wrestling, at least for the hardcore wrestling fans.
Right, and it's interesting you mentioned that, the hardcore wrestling fans, because quite frankly, Vince McMahon has not really appealed to the hardcore wrestling fans. He appeals to, I guess, a more mainstream casual audience, and that's why it's not all about in-ring competition, if you will. That being said, he's not really appealing to that big of a group, regardless of their demographics and their, history watching wrestling. But that's relating to Monday night and to Friday night. Wednesday night is in the books, and the ratings came out, and there's no doubt that All Elite won the first head-to-head battle. That being said, I'm not sure how much that really means a month from now or so, because it was the first ever All Elite show. Certainly they're going to get eyes on it. Now it's, will they retain those viewers that tuned in last night?
Yeah, so let me break this down a little bit. I agree with you. Just a little over 1.4 million. Apparently TNT was hoping from anywhere between 500,000 to 600,000. So clearly they more than doubled what TNA was as hopeful for.
Were they hoping for that for the first show, or
yes,
like as a steady number?
No, they were looking for that to start off. They would have been happy with that.
Because NXT by itself did about 1.2 last couple of weeks,
was their open 2 weeks ago, and then it dropped below 1 million last week and dropped another 100,000 last night. If you add up both audiences, that's about an average of a Raw rating, which I found intriguing.
But there's a lot of crossover.
Right. Because when I saw the rating, I went, I wonder if NXT wasn't on the air. How many does AEW hit 2 million? Maybe, because you think a lot of that audience would then watch AEW. If there was no at 2 weeks ago, 1.2 was NXT. So AEW
Which I think was a decent number, right?
Right. And AEW got 1.4. So they clearly got more eyeballs than NXT. So that tells me that some of the promotion that they did got maybe casual people to watch. Now, last night I was at the gym. I'm watching Highly Questionable on ESPN, and it was at the end, and it was like things that go on that night. They did a segment on AEW. Will you watch All Elite Wrestling? I was kind of surprised that a sports show was, talking about AEW, especially since WWE has a partnership with ESPN. And I'm like, oh wow, they really are getting a little bit of pub here. Okay, and
which is what WWE's been trying to get with this relationship with Fox as well.
Right, and I was pleasantly surprised. I was hopeful for 1 million for AEW. I thought if they cracked 1 million, that was going to be good. 1.4 I think is amazing. I think if they can keep it above 1 million, then it's a success. I expect next week to drop, like you said. Did you see how WWE actually sent out a press release?
Yeah, you know what? So here's the thing. I think that you have to wonder, like, who's actually saying this and who's said stuff before, because it was sort of like they took the high road and it was a classy gesture.
I have a thought on this. I really would like to just tell everybody here. They released that right before the ratings came out, which they already had. They knew they lost technically. Okay,
right.
They're trying to play the PR game now. The good, like, hey, we're good sports. This is great for everybody. We hope you're successful. We're successful because the fans are the winner, which I think is a load of crap. Vince McMahon has shown. If Vince McMahon cared about wrestling fans and he wouldn't put NXT up against AEW. He's trying to kill the promotion. He's signing. He doesn't want them to succeed. He's not thinking this is good for the wrestling fans, which it is.
Right.
But he doesn't really care about that. He wants them to fail. He did this because this is the first time a WWE produced show lost to another wrestling company since like 98, maybe 99. So it's actually historically a big deal, even though it's a third tier brand. It's still somewhat of a big deal. And I'm sure Vince isn't happy because he doesn't want to lose out, and they made sure to put in there, it says in the sprint it's a marathon, so which is true. I mean,
if it was a sprint, WCW would have won 20 plus years ago, right?
Because they had like a year and a half straight of beating them in the ratings. So and they're right, they've been here before. I think for at least the next month or so AEW will probably win, at least for the next month, and then we'll see. But if AEW continuously wins for the next 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 weeks, is Vince going to want to tweak NXT? Is he going to want to get involved because they're losing? That's the question.
Well, that's a good question, and I want to get more about this dynamic from you in particular, since I believe we're kind of trying to balance both NXT and All Elite. Yeah. But let me say this. Vince shouldn't care that much about NXT and how it does against All Elite. He should more so care about what's happening on Monday and Friday and how those numbers are. Before you start tweaking NXT, make sure you get the other two shows trending in the right direction, and then it really becomes inconsequential how your number 3 show, if you will, NXT, is doing, because the pure wrestling fans are going to love NXT regardless. They're not going to complain about it. And if you grow the casual viewers on Monday and Friday, then that's all that really should matter to him, right?
You would think, but there's that fire within him. He doesn't want anyone.
Competitiveness, right?
Yeah, right. And he doesn't want anyone stepping on his toes. And right now, AEW is the biggest threat he's faced since WCW. It's funny. It took one show for them to put out a press release with AEW. To Impact Wrestling, TNA, whatever you want to call them, has been around now for like 15 years. Not once did he ever feel necessary to say something about them, even when they went up against them on Monday nights. He never took them seriously. Over the course of the last year, even without having a weekly show yet, he was already taking AEW seriously. One, because he knows they got money backing them. This isn't a small thing. This is a billionaire backing them again. He knows that there is talent over there. He was afraid of losing other talents to them. So I think he's clearly watching. I'm sure Triple H, it has to be competitive with inside him. He doesn't want to consistently lose.
But I could see Triple H being more so like that's his type of statement that came out today. Not saying that he crafted it, but I could see him legitimately saying something like that. Whereas Vince, I can't ever see him saying something like
I'm
that.
sure Vince had to okay that. Someone didn't put that out without Vince saying, okay, put that out. That's okay.
Right.
There's no way.
But I'm saying if they're really speaking, like if we're having a beer with Vince and Triple H, Vince is not going to say anything like that probably. Yeah. Triple H could.
Right. And I do wonder how long before NXT leaves Full Sail and starts doing shows on the road like
I don't think that's going to be why would that matter to someone tuning in?
Actually, I did some at lunch today. On my work, I was actually intrigued. Last night, I went through some Twitterness. I went through some articles online, reviews, and different opinions. And what I found is what I think me and you talked about off this podcast is a lot of people said AEW had a more of a important feel because of the atmosphere. It seemed more. professional. Then NXT was more quiet down. NXT felt like an indie show, where AEW actually did not feel like an indie show. Which NXT is basically.
Well, what do the hardcore fans want? Don't they want like an indie show?
Well, they're talking to bring fans in.
Right,
AEW
I understand
has
that.
more of a chance to bring in more casual viewers than NXT does. So if you're talking ratings, that's going to matter. And sooner or later, I do think within a year they're going to leave Full Sail and go out on the road. I really believe that.
So we should preface for someone who might not be aware, they do very legitimate tours of cities, but that's not what they do for their TV. That's the difference.
Right.
So you brought up something that kind of caught my attention there. So All Elite came about because people wanted a more grassroots type of promotion as opposed to Vince McMahon and this corporate conglomerate and stuff. Do they want All Elite Wrestling to become something that appeals to casual fans? Isn't there part of like the hardcore wrestling fans that want like, this is our thing? We don't want these outsiders who don't know about. They don't know about Joey Janela before too.
Right here, you'll get that, but here's the thing: if you don't get that, then eventually they won't grow, and they become what TNA. You need.
They would be a bigger version of Ring of Honor,
right?
Probably.
You eventually need to expand. Right before they went on the air, they struck a deal with Canada, so now they're airing in Canada. I mean, this is all good for them,
Right. Well, no doubt about that. But I'm saying if they start appealing to casual fans, aren't they sort of compromising what they really seemingly offered alternatively?
Yeah, some kid coming over, like, those young bucks, they're real cool.
But do they care about the work rate?
Some might, maybe some will get into that. If that's what you first see and that's what you fall in love with, then I do believe that. I
think all along we could have said like NXT is so great at like the storylines and stuff like that, but it's ultimately always going to be more about the in-ring product, and that's not going to appeal to a girlfriend of a wrestling fan or whatever. She's going to care more about what we saw at the end of Monday Night Raw, which we're going to get to in a moment. You agree with that? Like NXT and potentially at least what I thought All Elite was going to be, and maybe still will be, you kind of have a ceiling because there's only so many hardcore wrestling fans out there.
We have to see, are you familiar with Jay and Silent Bob from those movies?
I heard the one guy that's going to be in the movie was there. I've not seen the movies.
They both were there. So I actually kind of cracked up because I went to myself, man, if we were watching Raw and they threw Jay and Silent Bob on, the hardcore fans would be like, oh my God, what are these, what are they doing? And they already threw out a little celebrityness. Time will tell. I could see that what storylines are trying to build with their first show. You kind of see where they're going, what they're trying to accomplish.
So it's Cody and Jericho now?
Well, it's like Jericho,
and
Jack. Yeah. LAX against the Elite. Okay, they're doing that. Moxley and Kenny Omega reunited their feud, which it was a pretty cool spot. I don't know if
they would have already had a match, I believe, if not for Moxley's injury, right?
Right, okay. Right. But they're supposed to fight at the next pay-per-view. Moxley put him through a glass table, which was a pretty cool spot. So they're trying to, they igniting Jericho and Rhodes for the title. They're trying to get their storylines fired up and going. So give it a month or two, see what they do before we really pass judgment on their show.
So how did you treat this? Because you were home. As I told you, got home about 5 minutes before 10 o'clock. And I didn't even realize that NXT ran over by about 15 or so minutes.
I watched
it on DVR.
It was being advertised that they were going to go over 15 minutes. So I guess that was done. So AEW's over at 10, people switch over, and you try to hook them.
Right.
It both ran with limited commercials. Both ran at times with the commercial on, but the little small screen.
Which I'm so OCD that I don't fast forward through that when I watch it on demand. If there's even a little, I'm squinting, but I don't fast forward through it unless it's pure just full screen commercials.
Yeah.
So that works in that sense for them.
Yeah. I was going back and forth a little bit. Whatever kept my interest more. Okay, what's going on here? Oh, all right. And it's ooh, okay. I probably
Well, if
watched.
that's the case, you had to have watched Cole and Riddle the whole way, right? How would you not be interested in watching a
Actually, this is true. I chose to watch Cody because it was the first match at
right?
AEW.
And I knew that was going to be your answer, but I'm saying, like, if you're really basing on what kept your attention.
Also, which you know this, I don't know if the listeners do. I'm not really a Matt Riddle fan. I am an Adam Cole fan, but Matt Riddle doesn't do much for me. So him being involved in the match wasn't that great of a draw for me. Like next week, everyone's like, "Oh, Walter's going to be on." No, I'm not the biggest Walter.
And I kind of feel the same way about Kushida. Like I know he's great for what he did in Japan, and I've seen him in Ring of Honor, but like to me, it hasn't. He's maybe not quite Hideo Itami level of struggling, but I don't think it's really clicked for him yet.
Right. So that match to me isn't like must see.
But
now,
I agree. But this is we're kind of on like opposite ends of the spectrum here.
yeah.
If that match were to be transported into AEW next week, every one of their fans would be going nuts for that, right?
Well, and I'm not saying those same fans aren't going nuts for that match in NXT. I'm just talking on my personal level.
Right, I get that.
Yeah.
Do you think people who are critics of WWE would have had plenty of ammunition if a big Monday Night Raw episode, or let's say the series or the debut of Smackdown on Fox ended with Jack Swagger coming back? Wouldn't that be like, oh man, what a lame ending?
I didn't see many people like, oh my god, what a like. I didn't see people kind of go over the top with it. I saw people go, oh man, hit like, oh okay.
Which I asked my friend, he's like, yeah, they probably should have done it at a different time, like maybe in the middle of the show or something like that.
I mean, he kind of fell off the radar for me, and I kind of Googled him after the fact.
He was doing MMA, right?
Yeah. And apparently he's legit badass. Like he's undefeated. Like he's kicking ass.
Not doubting that, but I don't know that should ever matter in wrestling.
True, but MMA is big in wrestling, and this way, Bellator, if they can get a connection with them, it could maybe mean more guys crossing over, whatever, cross promotion, because he's still going to fight. Look, he's a great athlete. I think even people when he was in WWE all knew he was a pretty good athlete.
I liked his work in the ring.
Yeah. Good athlete, never really got too far over. He wasn't that good of a promo. Now let's see what
he was like Bobby Lashley level of everything else.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most over he ever was We the People with Cesaro, Zeb Coulter, which the AEW crowd was chanting "We the People," which actually they cracked me up. But let's see how they present him. If they present him like he's like a big ass star, it could be laughable for people who watch WWE.
But that's like what Ty Dillinger. I mean, there's no doubt if you look at the rosters, like whether you are partial towards WWE or partial against them, they have signed over the past 3 or 4 years some of the very best in this continent. And you could say there's the best workers are still in Japan, but like a lot of All Elite, other than the elite, basically were guys that probably weren't good enough for WWE. Not saying everyone, but that's the vast majority. They were sort of the people who were passed over.
Not everyone, but maybe
the majority.
Some. I mean, some are still very young, and they just didn't. Maybe in 2-3 years they would have been signed. Like Jungle Boy, I think would have been signed eventually. He's only like 21.
And I know the Lucha Bros, like those are guys that certainly.
Well, WWE has tried to sign them. LAX. They tried. There are some guys that they legit tried to get.
Right. I'm not saying it's everyone, but it's like if you and I were to compare it, it's like Pitt's recruiting class versus Penn State's recruiting class. That's not to say Pitt's not getting good guys. Sorry, Justin. But the reality is, head-to-head, WWE has gotten the vast majority of people they wanted over
and they
the past
also
couple
have
of years. So
like
that like their lower-level guys, like a Cassius Ohno, would be amongst the best in All Elite.
Yeah, well,
that's why you're seeing that with a Jack Swagger, with a Ty Dillinger. Those guys were not really considered anything special. I will say
this about Ty Dillinger. He was very over in NXT, which is basically almost like the same fan base, right? He was hugely over in NXT. They loved him down in NXT.
Right. I mean, like to the same level, like slightly below like a Tyler Breeze.
So they loved him, and Tyler Breeze is amazing. He just has a
right. But I'm saying, like, you look at
about
WWE, you could say, yeah, he deserved better, but you're not saying that's a top star, right? I mean, look at the guys ahead of them. You know, like, that's what I'm. There's so much more talent. I think that when you see a guy like Swagger, if he's presented, I know his name's what's it? Is it Hager now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, he's an ex-world champion. All right, Vince put the belt on him.
And I think Jinder Mahal maybe will go next to All
Elite.
And,
Well, I think if that happens, people might walk out.
okay, so I want to get to SmackDown, and I think we need to talk about how big that show is going to be. And then there is the pay-per-view, which normally we run through all the predictions. There's 3 matches right now for a pay-per-view that's 3 days away, which is insane. But I did want to touch on a couple things on Raw very quickly. I think the thing that most people are going to be talking about is how the show ended, and that is really Bobby Lashley hooking up with Lana on the stage in front of Rusev. WWE, like when Vince hired Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff for these roles, it didn't feel like things really changed. For me, more than anything else, it was Vince saying we're going to double down on the entertainment part of sports entertainment when All Elite started to rise to prominence and got the TV deal, even months ago when it was announced and they had their pay-per-views. Is this an example of Vince putting entertainment well above wrestling once again, trying to create interest in maybe a way reminiscent of the Attitude Era?
Yeah, I mean, look, the end of Raw, I think I texted you and that made me feel uncomfortable. And maybe that's the point. If that was the point, it worked. They did their job.
Same with Marie and Mike Kanellis.
That to me is more of a joke. I don't feel uncomfortable with that.
Fair,
I
fair.
laugh. This was legit a man watching his wife. And if it would have been like a little peck or a kiss, I never would have, okay, but like legit, that was hardcore. Tongue was down her throat. Like, that was
Is
like.
Lashley married? We know he has a bunch of sisters.
No. But that was hardcore making out, like going at it. Like, I would be very uncomfortable as a husband watching that.
Unless Rusev's into it.
Well, hey, we know Xavier Woods, and Xavier Woods is into it. And Bobby Lashley, like I'm sure they talked before they did this. Like if I'm Bobby Lashley, I would feel weird. Like this man's husband is watching me make out with his pretty attractive wife. Now her legs up on me, like is Lashley getting a little erected? You know what I'm saying? Like this, like.
And this happens in movies, but like we know that in professional wrestling, a lot of times this does actually lead to real life scenarios down the road.
Well, the famous one is what woman? Benoit. Kevin Sullivan was married to a woman, Nancy Benoit. We came to know. And they did an angle with Chris, and he was like, yeah, not a problem. Well, guess what happened? She ended up falling for Chris, left Kevin Sullivan, and the rest is history. And there's other countless stories of wrestlers getting involved in a storyline with somebody else.
Isn't that CM Punk and AJ Lee? I think were potentially the same scenario. It happened. Edge and Lita. Is this how Rusev and Lana even met? I could be wrong about that, but I thought maybe they got paired in NXT together a long, long time ago, and that's how they got together.
I don't even know how they met. Did they meet at NXT? I guess I don't know, because ever since they've been up on the main roster, they've been married, right? Or at least
I mean, when I first started watching NXT, they were already paired together, but my understanding was Rusev was signed, Lana was signed. It wasn't like they had already come together as like a package.
Yeah. It's just weird, and they haven't been on TV in so long. And
well, that's the part that annoys me. This, like, they just fast tracked this. They didn't build up Rusev as like a face and like we feel sympathy for him. It was like he was a heel a couple weeks ago, it seemed like, and then they made him a face because he saved Seth Rollins, and then they thought in the course of one night we would be really empathetic. But like, if he was a bad guy a couple weeks ago, we shouldn't really feel that bad for him.
Didn't he have like 3 turns Monday night? He came out like as a face, but then he went heel, and then with the Lashley thing, he became a face again. Like he's like the new Big Show.
It was like they wrote it like the week of and say, "Hey, we have a cool idea for Bobby Lashley and Lana. So we're going to have to make Rusev look like a face earlier that night.
Right. And here's the thing. They tried doing this angle with Ziggler a couple years ago with her leaving him for Ziggler, and it didn't go over at all. And it ended up being dropped. Look, Bobby Lashley can't get over to save his life. They tried carrying him.
Vince keeps trying, though.
And Vince just keeps on trying, like, we'll try Lana, we'll try this. And everybody and their mother knows they're married in real life. And I don't see people really buying it. Now,
it was good, like a one-time reaction.
Right. That was a very hard sell job, but I think that was more of a shock factor, like, whoa, like, look at that. Now, I don't think next week when they come out, unless they're going to do that every week, and then it almost becomes like softcore porn, honestly.
Which Vince might be okay with.
Vince, he's a little dirty. I think we all remember the Attitude Era.
Two other real quick things from Raw, Justin. I wasn't as big on the opening segment as most people were. It seemed to be a huge hit. Brock Lesnar destroys Rey Mysterio and Dominic. We knew Dominic was going to get involved at some point in a storyline. I didn't think it was going to be with Brock Lesnar. My question is, what does this lead to? I thought all along, main event, Rollins, Mysterio, Bray Wyatt comes out. He takes out Mysterio, takes out Dominic. That ruins the match because Bray had said, I want Seth all for myself. That was perfect. That would have made sense. Instead, Lesnar does it. But I think that's another thing that got a nice reaction to start the show. Twitter was blowing up.
I think you're missing the main point here. See, the main point is Brock is still mad at Eddie Guerrero for beating him for the title. So he took it out on Eddie's son. You know, Ray likes to pass him off as his, but we all think we remember who his pappy is. I think that.
Well, they had a match to determine that, Justin. A ladder match with Dominic hanging from the rafters.
Yeah, I think we're all missing the key. No, in all seriousness, I really don't know what.
I think it just gets Lesnar over for his title match against Kofi. Lesnar at heel over, I guess.
But does he really need to be any more over?
No, it just seemed weird. And, like, if you were watching Raw to see a killer main event between Mysterio and Rollins, wouldn't you be disappointed? You got Rusev and Rollins. That made no sense.
Right. And then that match went a couple minutes, and then Lashley's, hanging out with his wife on the stage.
And then Bray comes. Like, it's
right. I know that. Not to mention Corbin and Randy Orton are out there standing and laughing. Like, the whole thing was absurd. Like,
it's just like they threw way too many things together, and that's what I feel like WCW was like all the time, and I hated that about WCW. That to me, while Lesnar beating up on Mysterio and Dominic, like it got a reaction. I would have rather had it make more sense storyline wise. Speaking of illogical storylines, Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan is now going to be like the biggest promoted storyline for the next month because they're not squaring off, but their teams are, and we're supposed to care for some reason. I don't know who the face is. I don't know what we're supposed to think of all of this. It was very awkward. I think Ric Flair went completely off script for several minutes. I felt bad for The Miz. I don't know. The fans are into it. I heard that actually drew the highest rating of all of Raw. And that seems like it often happens, but it's just not sustainable. And, like, I don't care about another Saudi show being promoted above everything else, including the darn pay-per-view this Sunday.
It's people tuning in to watch that why Vince keeps bringing back these old people. I mean, these guys are old. It's more.
Ric Flair legitimately was, like, almost dead.
Right. Like, here's the thing. Ric Flair looks like a wind could knock him over at this point. I'm not trying to be ignorant. The guy's old. He's had serious health issues. I think
even before that, he was sort of like a loose cannon when it comes to, like, he just does whatever he wants.
Right. And I think it's time for him to stay at home. Hulk Hogan is a piece of crap racist that I really don't need to see on my television. How quickly Vince, they've tried to play the more high ground, but they're not.
See, I think Hogan, definitely you should recognize him for what he did and not try to erase him, but I also agree you don't need to use him really at all now, because he's terrible at promos too.
Right. They're both...
it's weird that when wrestlers get old, they lose their promo ability as well as their athletic ability.
Yeah, well, they probably don't feel as comfortable. It's not as natural anymore.
Right, I mean, I thought the same thing about Piper. Like, Foley's been pretty good, but most older guys, they struggle with promos too.
Yeah, and I mean, clearly this shows like Saudi Arabia. They love 80s and 90s WWE. They probably don't get... They're probably still getting those episodes.
Will Hogan and Flair do some sort of bump?
Oof. there's no way Flair can be medically cleared to bump Hogan. I can see a little bump maybe.
But Hogan's going to, like, kick someone or leg drop him. Oh, I guess he can't even leg drop. He'll punch him.
But no, I don't think he can leg drop anymore, right?
Right, no.
Fake hip.
But I could see Flair chopping someone.
There could be maybe Hogan gets chopped and maybe he like hulks up, points at Flair. Yeah, and then he gives the Hulk Hogan punch and Flair does the Flair drop. I don't know.
It should be really exciting.
Well, thankfully, I'm not going to watch it. So,
Right.
I mean, I'll have to read what happens.
Okay, SmackDown tomorrow night. This actually should be a must-watch show. Friday nights suck for me. I think Friday nights are tough for a lot of people. Let's be honest. Like, if you want to get kids in there, you're probably getting young kids or you're getting parents. You're missing out on, like, the 18 to 35 demographic, I think.
Even, 14 to 18, they're going over a friend's house, right? Or going to the movies Friday night. At least that's what I did when I was in, like, junior high and early high school. I wasn't sitting home on a Friday night. And this time of year, you have high school football games. I think ratings, it's a tough sell.
I think they're going to have really good ratings for this particular show.
Yeah.
Because they're getting The Rock. They're getting everyone. I think, is Goldberg there? Is
Austin there too?
So the thing is, it's going to probably be a crappy show, like flow and pace-wise, because they're going to jam all of this into 2 hours, and it's not going to really work. That's probably why they're not even making the effort for this pay-per-view, HIAC, on Sunday, because they know SmackDown's going to be a wash. Justin, you know I don't say profanities, okay? So ultimately, I think it's going to be like a really fun show. There's going to be stuff, including The Rock, that you're not going to see 99% of the time, but I don't know that it's going to be like a great show. So for people who haven't watched SmackDown before and maybe now are tuning in or haven't watched for several years, they're going to get, oh, The Rock, it was awesome, but they're not going to stick around to see Ali or, the Iconics next week when they're on.
No, because actually, I know somebody who's actually planning on watching SmackDown tomorrow night, and that's it. He goes, I saw a commercial, Austin, The Rock, I'm tuning in. And then I go, okay. And then I asked him, I said, well, are you going to watch the following week? Oh, no. I only care about those guys. I don't even know who's on there now.
Right.
And it proves, I mean, you might pop the rating for one night, but you're not serving the long-term interest of SmackDown because.
And I would say if you can get The Rock, you get The Rock. But what they're doing is they're making it so overloaded with these other people that it's going to take away from the current superstars.
The Rock's probably going to either verbally beat somebody down or rock bottom somebody who probably is a current superstar.
Should be Elias if he wasn't hurt, but unfortunately he is.
It's not going to help them.
So the pay-per-view upcoming, normally we go through all our predictions. There's 3 matches, and that's not an exaggeration. It is ridiculous. I don't know what they're planning on doing, but clearly they haven't been doing much planning at all. So let's quickly look at the matches. Seth against The Fiend, Sasha against Becky, and then a really random thrown together tag team match, Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns against the former Bludgeon Brothers, Harper and Rowan. First, I think that this has a legitimate chance to be one of the most disastrous pay-per-views in the sense of those matches can all be good, but you have nothing beyond that. I think Bray Wyatt wins the title. I think Sasha Banks wins the title. And then the tag team match, it really doesn't matter, but I believe at some point Daniel Bryan's going to turn on Roman. I don't think it'll happen quite yet, so I think Roman and Bryan win, but ultimately I think Daniel does align with Harper and Rowan, and they kind of triple team on Roman, but I could see that coming maybe down the road.
Well, I think your 3 picks were my 3 picks. Look, Bray better win. He has to win. If he doesn't, then it's just another failed Bray Wyatt experiment in my.
Is there any way that he can not win the title but still be as big of a star?
I don't know.
Because to me, I thought this was too soon for him to win the title, but now I don't know what you do that you had
so
this
do
match.
I never would have put him in a title match yet. They booked themselves into a corner.
I'm thinking like maybe January would work for him to be your champion.
Right.
Give him some time. Give him some feuds.
But now they've done it. You got to pull the trigger. You just have to because it's been blown too often before. Sasha, I think it's time for Becky to drop the belt too.
And that could open up both Seth and Becky to move if they want to.
SmackDown, exactly. And then the tag team match, Look, you told me today it was on the card. I didn't even know that was on the card, to be honest with you.
Well, you thought it was Shane and Kevin Owens. That's what everyone thought. But if you watched NXT last night, they said this Friday, Shane and Kevin Owens, loser leaves the company. That's a really big match that's got completely lost in the shuffle because people don't even know when it's going to be. So they don't have it on the pay-per-view. They have it on the big Smackdown premiere. This seems like the most insignificant pay-per-view ever, other than really just those two title matches.
This pay-per-view reminds me of would have been 07, 06. Remember the ECW pay-per-view December to Dismember?
I think Lashley was involved in that, right?
He was in the Elimination Chamber match. It basically, they only had like 1 or 2 matches scheduled for that pay-per-view, and the rest was just thrown together.
And that was like the brand that Vince clearly didn't care about, though.
Right.
This is the entire main roster.
Right, and that was a show that Paul Heyman quit on. It was so bad, and he was so embarrassed, he just quit the next night. Now, I'm not, but it reminds me of that in the regards of we have no idea who's wrestling, what the card is, what to expect. So whatever we do get, it's just going to be thrown together, and maybe the matches might be decent matches, but there's no reason. There's going to be no reason to care. And it's a gimmick pay-per-view, Hell in a Cell. Well, those matches aren't going to be in Hell in a Cell. I mean, it's just bad.
What if it's an hour and a half long pay-per-view?
I'm cool with that. Give me a 2-hour pay-per-view.
Well, we're not going to do a 2-hour podcast tonight, but final thoughts on what has already been a pretty significant week, and then will continue to be so, especially tomorrow night with SmackDown.
If you're a really good wrestling fan, you should be happy. I don't think you should want either one to fail. It's been an historic week. I think it's been good on both sides. I think NXT put on a good show. I think AEW put on a pretty good show. You want both to succeed. You want wrestling to be fun for years to come. I mean, I was switching back and forth. I haven't done that, since probably 99, because I really stopped watching WCW around 2000 because it got really bad. It was fun again. I enjoyed sitting here. Actually, my parents were over for a little bit, and my dad was like, I haven't seen you do that with wrestling since you were a kid. I'm like, I haven't really had an opportunity.
I was going to say, like, it's not like you really could switch to anything else on.
And at least right now, both have my interest. I told you, I mean, Raw and SmackDown are on the back burner for me. Wednesday night is my wrestling night now. I'm looking forward to both shows.
Do you think that there's a chance SmackDown becomes must-see with Fox taking over and maybe some pretty significant changes?
Absolutely. It could, because they want that apparently to be more sports-based, and Fox apparently has more say-so in what goes on, and USA just lets Vince and company do whatever they want on Raw.
And I think presentation-wise, it's going to be a lot different than anything we've seen.
Yes. So, I'm interested in seeing that. Raw, though, man, Raw's a hard sell for me right now. It really, really is.
Understandable. Justin, we appreciate it as always. I know we had some technical difficulties. We didn't get to see that beautiful face of yours close up, but thanks for joining the show. Once again, hopefully we can do it on a regular basis. 5-Star Pod Wrestle on Twitter, 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling on Instagram. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And hopefully, if all goes according to plan, we'll catch you next week right here on the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling.